After 20 odd years of persecution from these people, he enters Mecca with his head bowed. He should have entered with his sword in the air, telling them, I'm here, I'm back for you. Prophet ﷺ says, لا يدخل الجنة. A person will not enter paradise if they have an atom's weight of arrogance and pride in their heart. من كان في قلبه مثقال حبة من خردل من كبر. What does that mean for a believer? A Muslim will never be in the hellfire forever. But let's say you did all the 5 pillars. You went to Umrah, and you went to Hajj, and you were kind to your neighbor, and you did good to your parents. But you had a little bit of arrogance in your heart. You cannot enter paradise with that arrogance. It has to be removed from your system. If it is not removed by tests in this world, if it's not removed by the right company, it's not removed by fighting with yourself, it will be removed by the fire of Jahannam. So you can enter paradise. But we will not enter paradise without it. May Allah make us of those who enter paradise with no hisab. Ameen Rabbal Alameen. In my native hometown of India, it's very common for a family to have a driver, to have servants, etc. But you'll never see the driver or the servants at the same table eating. You'll eat, the servants and the driver will be eating in the kitchen, the gardener. It's 2 separate lives. This is today, and these are Muslim families I'm talking about. And it's very important to realize that this is today. Somebody who's not a king, just a middle class average person, will have some servants working in the household, or somebody driving the car, or somebody doing the gardening, and they will never sit on the same table to eat. We ask ourselves the question, why? There is something inside. They are different to me. I couldn't eat on the same table as them. Come on, me and them sharing from the same plate? What are you talking about? It's not possible. And if you look at our society, in Western society, there's definitely that feeling of class, that feeling of status. Certain people don't associate with certain people. We don't marry into those circles. No, we can't really go into those, that person's from this postcode. No, I can't really, we can't really associate ourselves. Or that masjid, the AC isn't great. The carpet's not that clean. I can't really pray in a dirty masjid like that. So people have this sense of, I'm above something. The Prophet ﷺ, let's start with how did he sit? Where would the Prophet ﷺ sit when he was with his companions? When he was not teaching, he would sit amongst his companions on the floor as he was one of them. Such that somebody would enter the gathering and say, Ayyukum Muhammad, which one here is Muhammad? Because he wouldn't differentiate himself from amongst them. Except when he was teaching, they placed a mimbar or a place above the elevated place above the ground so that everybody could see who was teaching and could hear him. But other than that, he would sit with them. Now, how would the Prophet ﷺ sit? Specifically, how would he sit? So I'm going to try and demonstrate for all of you. Like this. This is al-ihtiba, to sit habwa. Now, when do people sit like this, brother? This young man there sitting like this. Yeah, you sit like this when you're relaxed. Yeah? You don't have any particular reason to. There's no formality. Yeah, this is how the Prophet ﷺ would sit most of the time. He would sit like this, habwa. That's why the Prophet ﷺ, authentic hadith, he says, when the Imam is giving the khutbah, you shouldn't sit like this. Why? Sitting like this is very casual. When the Imam is giving the khutbah, you should be sitting attentively. So most of the time he would sit like this on the floor. But what amazed me when I heard the first time that the Prophet ﷺ entered the room and his companions stood up and he told them, don't stand up. Sit back down. He said, this is what the Romans and the Persians do. This is not what we do. When I enter the room, do not stand up. And if you want people to stand up for your entrance, you have a problem. Why, you think you're special? You're not special. Let them stay seated. You go down to them. This is how the Prophet ﷺ would be in his humility. He would go down to people. One day he was sitting. One of his companions said, look, why don't we give you a platform to eat? He was sharing from a plate with a slave. A slave in his household, a servant in his household, sharing from the same plate. Someone said, look, why don't you have your own plate? And why don't you sit on a, place that's raised? So he says, Innama ana abd. Me and this person are the same. We are both servants. I eat like a servant and I sit like a servant. This was the nature of the Prophet ﷺ. After 20 odd years of persecution from these people, he enters Mecca with his head bowed. He should have entered with his sword in the air, telling them, I'm here, I'm back for you. But he didn't. He enters with his head bowed. Why? The greatest humility is the humility you show to the people who don't deserve it from you. Everybody can be humble with their children, can be humble with their neighbor, humble with the shopkeeper. But the most difficult thing, that person you want to put in their place, somebody crosses you, somebody scams you, somebody has a bad dealing with you, and you want to show them, don't try this again with me. You want to humble them. To show humility to this person is the biggest test. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests your ego, somebody dents your ego, you think, you could scratch me anywhere, but you scratched me in my ego. I'm not going to let it fly. You have two options. You can humiliate them, insult them, abuse them, embarrass them, put them in place, or you can treat them with humility, with gentleness. This was the nature of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.